You're listening to the Karmic Mirror podcast, where we explore the wisdom tucked within the layers of the self-help world.
Together, we bridge the gap between esoteric teachings and practical tools for everyday life, with self-love and personal growth at the heart of each conversation.
Whether you're a seasoned seeker or just beginning your path, join us and uncover the magic within and around you.
Welcome back, everyone, for another episode of Karmic Mirror. And this one is one where we are diving into the area that we like to call Karmic Currents, meaning that Michelle and I have come prepared and ready with some topics, some themes, energies that have been circulating in our ethos and atmosphere, in addition to just taking the time to be in flow and see what energetically comes up for us to chat about and give exposure to for our community. Hello, Michelle.
Hello.
A lot of talking before this. We catch up a lot. We do this a lot. And then we're like, we should just hit record. And
Yeah.
so I would love for you to elaborate on what you were talking about that's been coming up a lot for you lately and expand on that because you were sharing with me high level and then I said, let's hit record.
Yeah. Okay. I obviously, we've mentioned in past episodes, I have had like a wild, it's not that wild, but a major change in my day-to-day life, in my work life. For those of you who are just tuning in and maybe haven't heard us mention it, we haven't talked at length about it, but my husband and I recently bought a antique store in the village that we live in. I had been working there one day a week. It was kind of a family connected and owned business previously. And we purchased the building and the business from them. And now I'm there much more. So my day-to-day life has gone from the last few years post-COVID, really being home, like working from home, or, I do makeup, so traveling, but a lot of one-on-one and a lot more time spent home and with myself than I have ever in my life.
And on your own schedule on this,
On my own
like,
schedule. Yeah, like I have really in the last, just to like preface what we're talking about is I went from years of managing and running beauty departments for luxury retailers. And so having these big teams of, big personalities, lots of people, and everything that comes along with that world, which is a lot. And that consumed all of my time. And then COVID happened, and the world kind of changed monumentally for so many people in so many different ways. For me, like I said, my day-to-day life went from managing a team of 40 to 50 people directly to being home in my apartment in Westchester with my one dog. And then, next thing you know, we're at a house. We get a second dog. We're in a totally different area. But then, so I've spent a lot more time with this kind of flow and flexibility about my days, but just so much more solo time, which is really, really invigorating for my human design profile, the two line of being the hermit. There is that aspect, but I'm also five line. So in human design, I'm a 5/2. In traditional human design, the five is the heretic and the two line is the hermit. And so in the shortest way, without getting into human design, there's like a part of my personality that is so outward facing, and there's a part of my personality that is so craves and desires solitude. And so, anyways, all that to say that now that my life has drastically changed, my work days, I'm spending 3 to 4 days a week in the store. And I'm really feeling this fifth line being activated like it hasn't been in recent years so much. And yesterday was the perfect example. I schedule myself on Mondays to do admin. I thought, my whole point and strategy going into this was Mondays are so slow. I'm going to be able to do all my admin work. I'm going to catch up. And some Mondays are like that. But then yesterday comes around and reminds me and kind of to just, keep things to laugh at myself or just at the astrology, at the human design of it all, at everything of just being a human. And I'm taking a long time to get to this, but basically yesterday I'm listening to the Channy Nicholas app of the week ahead astrology, and she's like, today, Monday is going to be about community and conversations. And I'm like, oh yeah, totally. I'm going to have conversations. No, from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m., that's the hours of our store. I was having the longest, like it was like people coming in to see me. And I have over the last 5 years in Millbrook have been almost like unconsciously building up regulars who come in to talk to me and who knew in the past I only worked 1 day a week in the store. And
Yeah.
so they would come in on my day. They would come in on Thursdays and talk to me. And now Monday, I'm like, oh, Michelle, I have a box of items from my studio that I want to show you. So we're talking for hours and hours. And it's hours, right? And then next thing you know, another person, hey, Michelle, I wanted to come talk to you about this. Or a customer comes in, can you tell me about this lamp? I found it in my grandmother's home and blah, 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 blah. Like it was just, I I got to the end of my day yesterday and I was like, I don't think I came up for air. I don't think I came up for air. I was in one conversation after another, and there was no pause. And I was kind of surprised that I even got anything done because, again, human design reference, I'm a manifesting generator. So I'm like really, really good at having a conversation and doing something at the same time. So somehow I managed to have all these conversations and do things like send contracts to people while
Yeah.
it's happening. But it was so fascinating to me. So fast forward, I'm like kind of taking today as my day off and I'm like vegging out in the morning on Instagram because, I just needed a moment to like just zone out on stuff. And P the Fairy on Instagram, who I love and I have referenced her before, she had in her stories mentioned something that just like kind of brought it full circle for me, or it just connected the dots of what we're talking about. And she shared this TikTok of someone like, I don't even know this person, but basically she's talking about being an optimal fifth line. And she says, my favorite part of working retail was reaching a stranger flow state. And some of our best interactions are with strangers. And I was like, yes. So that brought me all the way to the idea of getting into flow states while talking to strangers or being in conversation with people, which happens so regularly. But with strangers, it's very fascinating because, and I didn't make the fifth line connection until obviously until P pointed it out. And then it totally like my light bulbs all went off in my brain because there are so many instances where like my husband will be like, okay, like, having a whole conversation with this person, like, come on, like, we got to go. But I'm genuinely just, I get so wrapped up in these conversations. I mean, I missed a board meeting last night because a woman knocked on the door after closing and she came in and an hour later and we talked about so much. It was insane. And so, anyways, that was where I am at right now, is just connecting this idea of different ideas of getting into flow states, talking with strangers, or just these kind of flow states that we can get in when you have this level of communication with someone. I think that's really fascinating. But then tying in the fifth line, and the fifth line in human design is the projection field. And there is an element of having that five line in your profile where strangers will unconsciously kind of cast you as the person like that is exactly what they need. Like you can solve this problem or you can, whatever it is, it doesn't, and I mean, problem could be a whole spectrum of things, but we haven't even done anything. And I'm saying we because you also have a fifth line, but we have them in different placements. My fifth line is more conscious because it's my first number in my profile. And maybe that's what's coming up here and why, I don't know.
I think about like I would have when I was in at my former job, I would have touch bases with
Yeah.
partners. And what came up for me is, yeah, I don't think I was very in touch with that five line. It's still interesting for me to continue to learn and see how that shows up. But yeah, I would have these meetings where we'd end and I'm like, did I just spend this whole touch base helping them figure out how to manage up their boss, manage their team? Like we
Yeah.
didn't even finish our to-do lists that our teams need to partner on. So I was thinking about that too, is just how often, yeah, people want to come into my energy and really talk out, I don't know, things they're wanting to get answers to or problems they're looking to solve. So that's
Yes.
interesting. And when you're sharing, you had a bunch of people all doing that, but in very different ways.
It's so wild because in the beauty world, when I managed teams, it was that, right? Like, and it was everyone coming to me, Michelle, I have this blah, 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 and there were so many instances where I remember I would get so frustrated because I'd walk in and I'd have already people like trailing me with things. And I was like, listen, I need to put my bag down before we even have this conversation. Like, can I settle? Because also for me personally, I get so overwhelmed. There's so many energetics happening and emotions in those scenarios when it's a lot of people, which is why, I think about when I walk into a event, a party, or whatever, a restaurant, there's a few minutes where I'm just like sensory, like I'm just trying to get my bearings energetically and ground in that moment because I'm not really registering anything until I like settle back into my body, it feels like. And I think all these years later from that experience, I'm just connecting it in new ways. And there's Toby. And I'm a different version of myself than I was when I was managing beauty teams. I was less conscious of these things, whereas now it's a slower pace, but it's the same things happening. And it's really interesting. I don't feel frustration over it anymore the way I used to. Now I just find it really fascinating and I'm curious to understand it.
Well, I would imagine in your former worlds, or most likely there was this nuance of there's a problem, we got to fix it. I need an
Yeah,
answer. I got to do X, Y, Z. And the business really was reliant and the operations and all of those things in
totally.
the department. So, yeah, I mean, and that's one place that I have seen in the corporate America setting that can tend to frustrate me is that I think how you're feeling now at the antique center is how leaders should feel with their team. Having the time, the space, the energy, all of the things, right? And it's not to yeah, like knock how your team was showing up. It makes a lot of sense. But I think with understanding yourself better and being able to look back, it'd be interesting to see how Michelle would show up now with that mindset in that same
Oh my
environment
gosh, yeah.
different or what that might look like. Yeah.
Well, here's the other thing that comes up is in that experience in my past life, I think one of the maybe the judgments I had for myself and the people that worked with me were that I had this expectation that as a leader, I would question, like, am I not delegating? Am I not giving you the full autonomy to do, like in the beauty world, so many of the people that worked in my department, they were managers of their brand. And so I wanted to put a lot of trust in them because they were capable and they were. And this is the learning years later, right? This is the unravel like or learning, unlearning, et cetera, of it all is that it had nothing to do with their ability or because they did like that was I think this is one of the skills that I had as a leader or have as a leader is trusting people to do their job well and setting expectations and letting them do, and not doing. I don't do for anyone in that way. Like that's not my like that's never been my challenge. I'm like, no, no, no. Even though, yes, five line, there is an aspect of being like that whole idea of like if you want it done right, do it yourself. But I've never had that problem, or it's not that I just grew into being like, listen, you're gonna figure it out. You're gonna learn and you're gonna do it, and I'm gonna trust that you can, and I'll be here for your support. So in those moments, I would be questioning, and I didn't understand it the way that I do now, but I would be questioning like, what am I doing wrong that you are coming to me with this when you're fully capable of doing it? There were so many times in my past life where I would be like, to the person, they'd come to me with an issue, and I'd be like, well, what have you done? Like, what have you done to come to this resolution? What do you want to do about it? What do you want me to do about it? Because you're the brand manager. Like, I'm here to support you to do your job, or whatever it is. And now, all these years later, different experiences, learning human design, learning all this stuff, healing,
Yeah.
growing, all of it. I'm like, oh, okay, there's gonna always be an aspect of myself where there's the five line of it all. There's the projection field. People are going to come to me because they're going to feel like I can solve their problems. And maybe I can, but I don't have to. And I don't want to all the time. Five line core is, what are the problems you actually feel energized and excited to save that are the best use of your energy. And so now I can kind of step back and be like, okay, it wasn't even about like them, what we're doing wrong, what I'm doing wrong, whatever it is. It was just simply there's always going to be that energetic pull.
It's just tugging on my talent development brain so much
Yeah.
when we think about this realm is, yeah, we have the energetics, you have your five line, and that's just one component of working with people, being in a leadership position. And yeah, ultimately, the critical thinking down to it is the piece of no one has to be wrong, but I think that it's asking those questions. How can I show up? Why is this person not getting the end result of where I think they should be getting the end result? And I do think oftentimes I hear this a lot in my field of work is like, well, I told them this. I told them this. I told them to do this, and they didn't do it.
Mm,
And so I always just think we don't have to get down the talent development and coaching and leadership styles, but I think about those things and it's really just working with people and management in general,
yeah.
sales, customers, people coming in. It is that critical thinking of what is really the root problem that's going on. Because nine times out of 10, it's usually not for lack of access to information. Usually there's so much
Yeah.
going on. Yeah, I think the human design of it all just brings in added layers of ways to
Yeah.
communicate and understand what's going on. And yeah, you think about strength finders, our preferences to communicating, all of those all of those systems that you might see in corporate America. This kind of nudges on that line too of like we're all made uniquely differently and how can we show up with our gifts and
Yeah. I
yeah.
also think it's why the best working relationships I've ever had are with the people who were problem solvers, who were really independent thinkers, and who could come because it allowed me to then use my skills of problem solve or of that fifth line energy of being able to find solutions. I mean, I'm really good at brainstorming with people and finding solutions in that sense, but I could do it at like this higher octave of where I felt like it was the best use of my energy versus solving a problem I know you can fix yourself. Or I know
Yeah.
you can get to yourself. And so, like the people, and you can even think back to my relationships, like all of the people who I've remained close with to this day that maybe worked for me in a department and then went on to like just be super, super successful in their own in so many ways and really flourish. It was because like we could just use our highest like expressions in those moments. Like they weren't coming to me to save their day. They were coming to me like to really like bring their solutions and their ideas. And we were able to bounce off of each other and create something really, really great. And I remain close with those people. And in the past, it was like there was this frustration and repelling energy about the people that would come to me where I'd be like, you can do this on your own. You do not need to, sorry, waste my time right now with this because, like, but again, the just bringing it to consciousness is the five line. Like, they're strangers' expectations, and obviously they weren't strangers, but I'm just using the term strangers because that's what's present today. Is there's a lot of people that are new in my life that I'm just speaking to and meeting and coming
I
to me with
like
really
the
fascinating things. But
I
they
like the word stranger because for human design, because it's energetics. So
yeah,
that
yeah.
will show up whether it's someone you know or not.
Yeah. So with the five line, there is this aspect of the stranger's expectation, whether it's conscious or not, right? It's obviously unconscious because how do they know you're a five line or you
Yeah.
have a five line in your profile? But there's this expression or expectation that creates like this energetic opening for the five lines who, if you're not aware, to just like step right into. And then you get into this flow state. And I think that's what I was originally thinking about. But it's really, really interesting. There is an element or an aspect of being a five line where we are kind of designed to drop into flow states in this way because the projection field that's already happening without us trying does part of the work. And I read this about it maybe dissolving the friction of ego, like the energetic field. So this is like something we've never talked about, but the fifth line, that energetic field, the projection field, if people are unconsciously going to project that you as a five line could maybe solve their problem or save the day, the ego tension that occurs between asking for help and looking to someone to help you, it dissolves for you because that energetic field is like already playing a role. So there's no, not to say there's no ego, but there's like people aren't being like, oh, I shouldn't ask her because I'm so embarrassed or whatever, right? Ego talk of being like, oh, I don't want to ask for help. No, they're like, something about this person. I think they can help me, right? Like unconsciously. And
Yeah.
that is such a fascinating concept to me. And I want to hear what else you want to talk about because I think maybe you'll feel this too, but I think there's something that also in an interesting way connects to the episode we recorded with Kaveri, which will come out soon after this comes out, but in her hypnotherapy session, because I don't know about you, but I walked away from that session. It was so short, but at first I was like, I want to go back and do it. But then I was paying more attention to the conversation I was having after and how I was expressing myself in that conversation, verbally, non-verbally, eye contact. And it just was a slight shift that I experienced. So I'll leave that there and see what comes out for you in
Yeah.
general. It doesn't have to be that,
Yeah.
but we can get to that too.
I love hearing more about the five line. Hello, 3 5. Love to experience and see like real life examples of how that comes to fruition. And when you were talking, just a couple of things. I know as a leader, for me, I mean, it's very 3 5. When I do something and I've quote unquote mastered it or excelled at it, it is really easy for me to get in and get things done. And it was a really beautiful journey I had with my first leader at my old company where I felt like she had a lot of feedback for me, and I always felt like I was doing things wrong. And
Mhm.
so when rubber met the road, we were able to really have a transparent conversation, and there were a couple of things that always stick with me, especially as a five line and just people leader. And it's a couple of things like, is it wrong or is it just not your preference?
Mhm.
And I try to always think about that when people are asking for advice on things. Like, it's not wrong. It's not the way I would do it. It's not my preference, but it's not wrong. And so
Yes.
I think in partnership and leadership, it's important that you leave space for everyone, right? And of course, it also goes down to, my programmings of perfectionism and wanting to do things right. And of course, those things can rear their ugly heads. So that was what was kind of coming up for me. And then I think was there anything else that you wanted to piggyback off of that?
No, I mean, I think I spent a lot of time talking about it. I mean, I'm still very much like it's all connecting as I talk it out loud. Just this interesting learning and shift in how I'm viewing this part of
Yeah.
myself. And it's really interesting. It's cool to talk about it.
Well, and I can make this transition because some of the notes I jotted down of things that have really resonated with me lately, I think the organic transition into narratives has been coming up for me a lot. And so the
Hmm.
narratives around things, I got to narratives and really this topic. I mean, I think it's been a topic for a long time I talk about in my own world of just how I'm impacted by narratives. I think that's the work I do there. But let me paint the picture of how this kind of came a little bit more to be was that, and I think I had messaged you a little bit about this. I mean, I am super drawn to current day stories and truths and things coming out of things around the time when technology didn't give us access to a lot of details or a lot of people's personalities and narratives were really able to be created pretty easily. And so, but there was a podcast, Amy Winehouse and Me with Blake Fielder, I think.
Yeah.
And he is Amy Winehouse's ex-husband. And without getting into the whole episode, I mean, I was just glued because as someone who was in her late teens, early 20s around that time when Amy Winehouse came out, I think even her name, if you know who she is, there's probably an association that goes along with it. And he has never publicly really spoken out or given his story around it. But the narrative has heavily played around. It's his fault she became a drug addict. It's his fault
Mm.
that he's basically blamed for her death. and not only by her family, but by the news. Like that's the narrative they always wanted to create.
Yeah.
And so it's not only that narrative, there's so many other, but I think that the conversation was one of the most just honest and I hate to use the word interesting, but I was so hooked because when he said she didn't even die of a drug overdose, it was drinking. That's and potentially trigger warning for those people who maybe suffer, but potentially an eating disorder related of just like
Mm,
all of the concoctions. Like there were no drugs in her system when she died. And so he just talks about a lot of these things. And so that really got me thinking about narratives. And I think I've brought up Lilith Fair as well. It's like on the outside looking in at all of these, people who, when the inception of gossip sites and tabloids, even more so, and just how readily it just becomes a narrative. And when you actually get to hear the details around some of those stories, it's quite wild. The news was posting about because her ballet flats had like blood in them, and
mm-hmm,
so the
mm-hmm.
stories they were posting was that this is drug use, and it really was self-harm because
Yeah.
so you think about, I mean, we don't have to get down how
Yeah,
just
yeah. I remember the ballet flats though. That I do
horrible.
remember. That kind of sticks in your memory for sure.
Yeah. And so I think it really humanizes the whole narrative around both sides of that. And so it really just got me thinking about, again, more so about narratives and how narratives are created and why we buy into narratives and really just how easy it is to buy into narratives. And I think for me, just trying to be mindful of how I think narratives have really impacted me and my life and the ethos around it in like so many different ways. And so I can keep going on narratives, but I want to see what's coming up for you or like what thoughts just on that topic.
I mean, well, one, I'm not familiar. I mean, you told me about this documentary, and it is really interesting to think about that. I mean, I'm totally going out of not in left field, but like I was just thinking about the British journalism or paparazzi. And also they just have a reputation for I mean, look
Yeah.
at the royal family and there's such a, at least what little I know about the British media, it's like there has just been so many stories where they're really in your like there's just so much there it's well okay so I watched the Rupert Murdoch docu-series which talks about obviously his family which inspired the show Succession which I don't know if you watched but it was a really really great show but it also was kind of just a really accurate from the outside viewing I don't know any of them personally so I can't speak for their the truth of it but it felt like a really accurate portrayal once I watched the docu-series but
Is
he
Succession the one? Do they have is it salesy and they have a coach in the office?
No,
No,
I
I think
don't
I'm
think
thinking the wrong.
so.
Okay,
It's about like a big media empire and a family, and it's based off the Murdoch family. Rupert Murdoch was, started Fox News. He started Fox in general, but um, and that was a big deal at the time because you couldn't own newspapers and this and blah blah blah. But he also basically has had this entire media empire that spanned Australia, where they're from. They're not British, so they're from Australia. And also the UK and then the States. And so he really I don't know if this is like accurate to say, but from my understanding, really kind of pushed forward and pioneered the gossip tabloid media and the kind of like that, like clickbait, the rage bait, all of that, like the outlandish headlines. That was really influenced by what his media empire. And so it's this is like I'm not even bringing home any good point here other than that's where my brain went was just about how media before social media, these tabloids, remember those, the Inquirer, was it the Inquirer, the Star, all of those kind of, I remember as a kid, growing up in the 90s, it's like those were right at the grocery store,
yeah.
at the checkout. It was, and there's always magazines, but it was just so big at that time because of course print media has really like kind of waned a lot, sadly. And hopefully maybe who knows it. I think small towns are going to pioneer bringing back local news and local journalism and are very much so. And
I
they're,
mean, the
you know,
pendulum always goes
pendulum
back,
always spring. Yeah.
right? And at that point, we didn't have internet access. So yeah, to your point, I remember I would every time I traveled, I would buy a gossip magazine at the airport
Oh
for
my
the
gosh.
full.
Yeah. That's funny.
And I would be sitting at work, refreshing Perez Hilton to see
Oh
like what's
God.
the latest. I know it's like
Yeah, I mean, I think he's still going, but also like, yeah, I just remember those and
just almost
thinking,
died and found Jesus that
did
recently.
he? I know I never kept up with Perez Hilton because he just was, I'm so sorry to say, but he
Horrible.
always was really slimy to me. So, and I wasn't really big into the gossip mags because I couldn't really buy, I wasn't allowed to buy a lot, but well, when I was younger. And I
Yeah, yeah.
also wanted like, I always wanted fashion magazines. Those were the aspirational ones because like the just the beautiful imagery. And so anytime I could
Yeah.
get my hands on them. But the back to the topic of narratives, it's really interesting to think about it in that way. Like we talked about how social media, how things just blow up and things move quickly and virality, et cetera, of this day and age, and misinformation. And everybody is an expert, but they're not really an expert. And but they are given free reign to do it through social media because anyone can say anything truly in a lot of ways. And people are not necessarily doing the work of, for whatever reason, whether it's intentional or whether it's just the fact of programming and your brain has got so reliant on social media or whatever. But at this point, it was all we knew. You could not fact check. So what you read in those tabloids or what you saw that, and now we know them as literal the first form of clickbait, kind of, not the first form, but the first form, at least of my experience in life of clickbait. We're seeing these crazy headlines because they needed to grab you, stop you in the aisle, pick it up. Now I need to buy this, right? This is the name of the game. But to your point, and the Amy Winehouse and the narratives and the et cetera of it all is like this false information or these exacerbated storylines that may or may not have been true. Maybe they're rumor based or like you said, they're gossip and how that really influenced everyone. This is what you believe to the point of years later, people still probably would be like, "Oh, yeah, Amy Winehouse, this happened, right? And we all still think it's true, or people still think those things are true because it's what we read. And so you could draw the line to any narratives, right? We have believed this thing to be true for so long that it became true. And even when you learn it's not, your brain still has a hard time recollecting or even reconciling. I mean, that you believed something that wasn't true, and you're still going to have those preconceived judgments about something or someone based on misinformation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the themes they talked about on the episode is like, yeah, it really took an impact on her confidence when you're reading magazines like the top 10 worst looking celebrities. And she's
God.
number two, right? And you can find iterations of that stuff all over the place now on the internet. And then that's what it kind of got me to thinking about. And if we rewind back to about 3 years ago when I was going through my breakup and the visibility of it all in my mind and the narratives, and that's where it kind of took me back to was the feelings and anxiety and triggers that I experienced around narratives being put out there, narratives that could potentially be put out there,
Yeah.
other people's narratives, right? And you could just say that on social media too. I used to make the joke, oh, their life is just perfect. Just go check out their Instagram, So while we know these things to be true, but I think it kind of came full circle because one, I am super stoked that they're coming out with a Troop Beverly Hills. Did you
Oh,
watch
yeah.
that yet?
Of course. Yeah. And I saw it's Cameron Diaz, right?
Yeah, just obsessed. And so I had posted something about that. And I think two things here, if you can follow me, is one is about the narrative. So I had a friend reach out, an older friend, I haven't been in touch in a while, but just saying, like, oh, I know, me too. We're so excited. And so then we started being nostalgic, and I shared that when my ex was away for work that I had started showing the girls who I was bonus momming. We started watching all of these types of movies, right? And so I preface this because this is not just somebody reaching out randomly and bringing random shit up. Like, I had kind of said that and she responded and then she just said, by the way, you're way too good for your ex.
Hmm.
Said his name. Now keep in mind, she's never met my ex. We never hung out or saw each other when I was with my ex. but she does watch the show that my ex was on.
Uh-huh.
And I've not watched, I don't know what would have been brought up to think that. And I think, obviously she is privy to knowing me, knowing what I'm like. We have mutual friends and kind of probably knowing high level what happened a little bit. And or making narratives up around the show too. And so, while one, yes, it was really kind. I think it also for me, it was what we like to call, or what I will call, just for lack of a better word, these like tests. It was somebody reaching out, bringing up my
Hmm.
ex. And so I really got to, hello, three line, experience how I was feeling,
Hmm.
and it is vastly different than how I was feeling 3 years ago, even 2 years ago, right? I could take it and not let it roll, but it was very interesting, these parallels of just her thoughts, her narratives around what had happened, my truth because I lived it. And now I think perceptions in the way people perceive things when they're living a life is different, but it just was all so wildly kind of interesting to reflect on because, especially during that time, as you know, people putting narratives on my whole life, on everything I felt like I was doing, saying, reacting to, my actions, there were just narratives. And to be fair, that was and is my job to understand how those narratives impact me. And so I think like that's the wild thing where we can look at it in, yeah, have you watched, I know this is maybe, it's not too squirrel, but I was thinking about it when you were talking. Did you watch The Manosphere on Netflix?
No, I cannot watch it. I have watched, I follow one of my favorite people to follow online is Amanda Norgard. She was on my radar because Kundalini Yoga, and I've taken her classes, and I really one day want to maybe join one of her Muse cohorts in the future.
Yeah,
Anyways, long story short, she was posting about it, and that's how that show got on my radar because I wasn't even seeing it like on Netflix or anything. But then
yeah.
she said, like, I started watching it and I had to stop. I cannot even, and she went on a whole thing about it. And I was like, oh, I saw the preview after that. I went and I was like, okay, I get the gist of it. I think I maybe went and researched. I think I went and looked up like some maybe article or something explaining about the show, maybe an op-ed or something like that. So that's
Yeah.
my access or my into the Manosphere, though I have zero intentions of watching it. I mean, I think I already know.
You
I
do
think I
already
think we
know.
know a lot of these Manosphere type
Yeah.
people. Although I will say the one thing that kind of piqued my curiosity was their use of the term, and I don't know if you've seen it and you can confirm this, but their use of the term the Matrix and waking up from the Matrix. I saw somewhere that they referenced this, and it's really comical because you are very much within the matrix. My man, not my man, but men, manosphere men, you're in the matrix and you are so fucking unconscious, you don't even know. But yes. And
Paige and Hannah had brought it up on Giggly Squad. And
uh-huh.
so well, another thing I'm really leaning into is, where has this untrust and fear of men really come up in my life? And so I thought, hey, why don't I just watch this just because it's interesting to, I don't know, not interesting, but let me just dive in. Paige and Hannah are doing
Yeah.
it. Let me just dive in. And I think when you were talking about it is wild, when you were talking about the clickbait,
Uh-huh.
things like that, it was really wild to see that whether these people believe it or not is kind of moot point for me. It's the
Uh-huh.
narratives they're creating with the content that they have and what they're receiving from putting those narratives out there. And it was a hard watch. Not that I was surprised. I mean, listen, I've never listened to any of these people's podcasts. I would have never, except I
We're
did
not the
see
audience for them,
we
clearly.
are not the audience for them. And what was really just really hard for me to swallow was just the interactions with is it Justin Thoreau? I
Isn't
forget.
Justin Thoreau Jennifer Aniston's ex? Oh,
Yeah,
wait, I think I made that up. Clearly, I like, again, back to the hermit and to the 5-2 of it all. And I hope that anyone listening has a little bit of insight into human design because I do always in the back of my mind when I reference human design because it's become so much of our language. I really hope I'm not turning anyone away that doesn't know this language, but please go listen or just like DM us and like ask us our questions because my favorite thing in the world to do is to voice note people and strangers pipeline on the
Yeah.
internet of like, oh, let me see your profile. Let me tell you about your human design in a voice note because it's just these things are fun. But what do I love more than being under a rock?
Yeah, yeah,
Not
yeah.
having access to pop culture, or I mean, having all the access, but not having any interest or desire to know until someone puts it on my radar. But, anyways,
I
Louis
know it's
Theroux,
wild. So Louis
not just
Theroux.
Jennifer Aniston's ex-husband who had like a cameo in the Charlie's Angels movies, and that's all I remember
I
because
know. And then when you questioned me, I was like, wait, but is I'm getting the name wrong, and isn't that a Canadian politician I'm thinking of? So I just
it,
Googled
you know what?
it.
It may, no, 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 no. Justin Trudeau is
Yeah.
the former, okay, what is it? What is the, how many points of separation? Justin Trudeau is the former Canadian Prime Minister who is now dating Katy Perry. And I say again, two line, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, the random facts just come up, and it's really, it's something. It's something.
Yeah, it's something. So Louis Theroux, and this is a documentary, and so they're showing it. The reaction to the questions that he's asking was quite interesting. Not interesting, but what really didn't sit well with me is just the intimidation element they were kind of using with him, the
Yeah.
mocking him and making fun of him for content. Just because what happened is they started filming, and then
Mhm.
because they're so live on the internet, all of these people in Manosphere, people start in the comments saying he's going to do a cancel piece on you,
I
right?
see.
So
I
they
see.
signed up. So it becomes this whole like back and forth. But again, it was just another example of how there are these narratives out there and what feels really scary. And I think what gives me anxiety around all of this stuff is that like these are real human beings at the other end of these things. And
Yeah.
it really does and can cause a lot of harm to people. And I think it makes a lot of sense with my 3-5 of going through this journey of understanding just even and listen, my ex was not in The Bachelor. He wasn't like on these big mainstream global where like people would know them, and still even the impact of other people talking about my life,
Right. Well,
gossip
wait,
sites and
there's so many of these shows out. There's so many communities centered around these shows. So it's like the broader world. Like, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know shit about him. I still don't because I don't give a fuck about this guy. But
yeah.
am I censoring our episode? I'm giving us all the F words. But it's call it an Aries. It's all the Aries energy that's happening right now that I'm like, but all that
Fuck
to
that guy.
say is that even though it's like the thing of being, we're all so special and we're not special at all because we're all little flecks of like dust on this planet or on the multiverse. So even though, granted, there are millions and billions of people who don't know him, don't know anything about the show, never watched it, including myself, right? There are still communities of people, and whether it's seven people or probably in this case, I don't know, like hundreds, thousands, probably thousands of people who have over the years, that's a lot of people to be having a little bit of insight into something that is so deeply personal for you. And
Yeah.
that is, yeah, that's a lot. I cannot even fathom, right? Think about any person. I mean, I don't have to tell you, but it's like thinking about any person that, we think about just the sheer embarrassment and cringe of what life would be like for us millennials had all of our 20s been broadcast and not just on MySpace or Facebook where we could go back and delete them or, like we're so lucky in that sense. But this is like on a bigger scale. It may not be the biggest scale in the world, but it's a lot. And it's a lot to think about anyone, even just being able to see parts of your life that you're like in a normal scenario, if you were not a person that had been on a television show and had some bit of D level, lower than D level notoriety,
Tell us how you really feel.
I'm like, I don't know, but I know enough to know I don't mess with you. Like to have some in, little level of notoriety, in a normal scenario, if you were just two average people and going through this situation, you would probably, like there's some safety in keeping this personal and not having it broadcast to anyone, let alone people talking about it who don't even know you. That's a lot. You didn't ask
Yeah.
for it. And you didn't ask to go be you're not auditioning for stop, like you're not trying to be like in the public eye in that way and broadcast your personal life, yet it happened in a sense, in a way. And yeah,
Yeah, and just like a lot of narratives around it. And I think, to be fair, during that time, and I've always stayed pretty consistent with this, is that people in my circle and my loved ones and people who love me so hardcore, nobody meant ill intent. Everybody was trying to show up for me the best that they could. And so for them, it would almost be like, oh, well, listen to the negative things that are being said about, your
yeah,
or your ex's new partner. And for me,
yep.
that's not the solve.
Right. You're like, this is not helping at all.
Because someone said something negative from Fargo, North Dakota about the person my ex cheated on me with. That's not helping build my self-esteem up, right? I think it's interesting just to think about the impact and, obviously just the emotional for people too. But the other one that I think about a lot is, I think you and I talked about this, but it was maybe like 2-ish years ago. Lauryn Hill was going to tour again, and
Uh,
I fuck with the Fugees so hardcore, and I
a
love Lauryn
hundred
Hill so
percent.
much. And one of my friends had said to me when I was like, "Oh my gosh, you hear she's going on tour?" Her immediate response was, "You know she hates white people, right?" And I felt in the moment, I didn't quite know what to think. Honestly, my first thought was, "Okay, I get it. Like,
Yeah,
I
you're
get
like,
it."
okay, and
Yeah.
you're
But
like, she
then
may have her reasons.
yeah, yeah, I was like, kind of got it. And then what was told to me was, no, she said she would rather have her kids starve than white people buy her albums. But it's this narrative
Mm.
of we can't buy her tickets or I'm not going to her show, right? And then guess what I did when I was thinking about it? I was like, is that true? Where did this come from? And so, do you know where this stemmed from? In 1996, she did a radio interview, and someone, literally, if you look it up, it says urban legend alleges that she said that someone in the radio, who worked at the radio station, started spreading that rumor.
Of course.
The
Of
radio station
course.
said, "Do you think if we had that audio, we wouldn't play it?"
Yeah.
And so this is 1996. And what, 2 years ago, 2024? And this narrative is still going
Almost
around
20 years,
almost 20
right?
years. And the reality of it is that does impact this woman's livelihood. And
100%. And
so we're
yeah,
yeah. And while she's definitely, and so I'm like looking at it's like her position in a 2018 essay, she stated, "I do not hate white people, but instead despises a system of entitlement and oppression." And she's clarified that she does not judge all white people, but rather speaks about her experiences with institutional racism and oppression. And so I know this is a heavy topic that I don't know that I was prepared to go down into.
sure.
And it just, I think, reinforces this concept of how detrimental narratives can be. There's lots of different reasons behind it. And so I've just really gotten curious on it. And one thing that I've started to do is, I mean, summer house drama even made its way to you, Scamanda.
I know. Were you
And
so
yeah,
absolutely tickled that I was interested in the drama without ever watching the show?
yeah, I mean, I'm on a group thread and somebody also, like, that's how it's wild when these things get to arenas that they normally wouldn't touch. And one of the girls was like, "Does anyone know who these people are? Who is Sierra?" And I was,
That's like me, but being like, wow,
yeah. And so as I was thinking about all of these narratives, because I follow some of that cast, and then, I went down a little bit of the rabbit hole, and what I decided to do was every time something's coming up about Amanda and West and talking about them, I hit not interested, don't follow, I
Mm-hmm,
don't want
mm-hmm.
to. And anything with Sierra, like she's interviewing on the red carpet or she's posting or there's like something like raising her up, I like it and I interact with that,
Sure.
and just trying to stay out of that whole narrative because it's hard. And I get why we're so attached to it because people are really invested and also these are their real lives. And so I also, it's things, I think it's why I don't tend to go and comment underneath people's things about anything. Like only
Yeah,
positive,
same.
only yeah. So yeah, narrative's been circling around.
Yeah, I think I don't know what I think about this, the fact, well, I do, but about just the fact that um I mentioned this in our episode with Kaveri was about this meme or I don't know, some post that said something about like the funnest time a girl can have is spotting patterns or pattern recognition and stuff. And it's so true. Like it's just being able to find the connections from a broader theme and how it trickles into everything. I also find it really um fascinating how you like to spot or you like to find themes and connections and patterns and habits, etc., human behaviors through modern day experiences. And I tend to do it through a historical lens.
Yeah, I know, but I love it.
No,
I mean,
I
I
do
think
too. I mean, it's actually really fun.
you
Maybe
like jump on today and you're like, I was watching the Monte Cristo.
I was up till 2 a.m. watching the limited series, The Count of Monte Cristo. Just, it was gripping, riveting. Sam Coughlin, I said this before we hit record, should be nominated for something because I think he says such beautiful acting in it through just the entire emotional arc. I mean, the many arcs throughout this story of the Count of Monte Cristo. And but again, it is talk about narrative because he's framed for a crime he didn't do and he didn't commit for someone to cover up someone else's bad deeds and coveting of the woman that he loves and jealousy. And they created a story, he died in the dungeons or that and yeah, so not that maybe I was reaching for the connection. I mean, it's there, but all that to say, yeah, I just I couldn't necessarily explain away why I find history so fascinating. Yes, so anyhow, stayed up super, super late and maybe I'm a little bit reaching for the connection, but that's just what I was watching last night. I was like really stuck on it and I was up till 2 a.m. watching it. I was starting to doze off, which is when I was like, all right, now you're trying it. Now you're pushing it.
No, I get the narrative. The narrative connect is the narrative around somebody being falsely accused and everybody buying into that
Everyone
narrative.
buying into it. And then his father dying of grief, his entire life ripped away for 15 years. I mean, if I can squeeze one more book into my list this year, but I am so grateful to be on this classical literature journey this year because it is exercising my brain and my processing and my emotions in deeper ways because now I'm going into a totally different area, but I have a lot of frustrations with the way that stories and entertainment has gotten super, super watered down in so many facets of things that I really genuinely love, whether it's live theater, television shows, movies, books, etc. Granted, there are so many things I love to read that don't have to be super deep or don't have to be like written by a classic author, whatever. But I do find that in today's day and age, because we have 15-second clips, because we need to be, catch people's attention really quickly, because people are so oversaturated with content. There are billions and billions of shows out there that kind of really are about nothing. And because people are watching things, they're watching films while being on their phone, where all our attention is just so scattered and it's being clawed at from every direction. And so the world today is not designed for us to be present and with a subject matter in front of us and really feel it, read it, experience it, process it in a way that, years past, these classical books and stories have so much depth to them. Oftentimes what you were sitting by candlelight, maybe reading a story, and there was no television, there was nothing, there was no phone to distract you, there was no TikTok where you're like, I'm gonna watch my show and I'm gonna be on my phone, right? Like all of those things, I was finding myself in such a little perpetual state of frustration over my dislike of how things are in that way that I so unconsciously was like, I'm gonna go read a lot of classic literature this year. And I think the connect here that is not to anything we've talked about, just my personal tangent, is that I am the type of person that when I start to feel myself getting too complacent or with frustration, or I start to hear myself complaining, maybe even complaining about the same thing too much, I have this, like, I don't know, a built-in filter of like, all right, you've spent enough time here. You don't get to wallow. Like, this is just part of how I'm built and part of what I've come through, right? Is that I won't allow myself to stay in those states for so long because I start to dislike myself in those states. And I can trace back to so many different experiences in my life, this just being a very tiny one of like, I was really getting tired of my frustration in that tiny little area of life of like, oh, I'm complaining about what I don't like, what isn't working, blah, 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 blah. Well, then, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to force myself to sit down with books. And in this case, this is a series that I watched, but that was different. But, that really hold my full attention. And I think you said this, and I think you said it before we started recording, but as you're finishing up the Throne of Glass series, finding yourself rereading parts, and that has been part of my experience too, is going back, rereading a section, like really retaining this information, or just really being in it and being okay with being like, okay, you know what? I got to read that back again. Like I just skimmed over it because this is what my brain has been doing for the last several years of, modern life. And so in a funny roundabout way, this experience and coming to the Count of Monte Cristo, a book that is so long that I have put off for years, that I've loved the story, very familiar with the story, but never read the book because I was so intimidated by this idea that I would get into it, love it, but not want to finish it and judge myself for that, which is so silly. But now I'm like, I'm compelled to, because this series is so gripping. Honestly, today, my day off, my karmic mirror day, my catch up on my community service day is also my catch up and like do the thing that you aren't quote unquote supposed to do, which is turn the television on during the day. Who cares? It's my day today to do all the things and just like be in my own energy after the shift of being, yesterday I was, like I said, in just conversation after conversation after conversation and getting into those beautiful flow states, but also the 5-2 needing that bounce. In this case, it's not necessarily a bounce back, but it's like a bounce back into my cave, into
Mhm.
this like solo moment where I really need that. I need that to recharge. I need the time with these things that kind of light me up, that are, whether they're entertainment driven, they're pure.
You were gonna say you were like these things. I was like, Michelle, those are your dogs, not things. Like, I
Okay,
need time with my
them
dogs.
too. Them too. I know yesterday it's so it's not, I say things sometimes when you say, like, when I'm about to be like, oh, it was so funny, and then my brain goes, it's not that funny. But yesterday I had scheduled, my dog Toby, he goes on hikes, and he goes on 2 hikes a week with a hiking club of other dogs. And I had put him on, he's going Mondays and Thursdays because those are days that I'm in the store. And yesterday, the dog hiker, the guy who runs a business, he's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I accidentally put him on Tuesday, Thursday." And I was like, I swear I don't have human children, but I go into like mom mode like this. I'm like, I really need, like, is there a way? Can you, like, please, I've got to get this dog out. I don't have time. I'm like literally about to leave the house. And so, of course, they schedule a third walk. Not a big deal. I mean, we pay for it, but, and so he got picked up and went on his hike. But I'm just laughing at myself because after the text conversation, and this has been like the second or third, not like this exact example, but where I've just been like, really like, my dog must get like this, he must have his I don't know, just it's funny. It's funny, dog people, dog millennials, you see all of those things online talking about millennials who don't have kids.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Well,
here's your grand. My mom found my old baby clothes and they fit, or my mom found my old baby pictures and I can't believe how much my child looks like me. And then it's like a picture of the dog. I'm
yeah.
like, we're such a funny, wonky generation.
I know. Well, it's funny because you know this about me. I'm not a huge animal
Yeah,
person. Definitely, if there are any animal I can tolerate or like the most, it would be dogs, depending on the dog, which
totally.
we've talked about. I think I don't want the responsibility of a pet in my life.
Yeah.
Also, just like energetically, it's a lot, anyways. But I know I've told you this before. I feel like I really know Toby and Layla. And so I'm not one of, like, when you tell me a Toby story or a Layla story, I like laugh about it. I totally get it. So it's so fun and interesting. And then remember when my friend, I went over to her house and like her 2-year-old, 3-year-old was like, I don't know, every time my mom's here, she keeps going over to the plant and taking out the dirt in the plant to like get my mom's attention. And I think I was
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Layla, that's your Layla.
Oh, they're so funny. It's like, again, talk about like filtering yourself, but just still doing it anyways. And I keep referencing Kaveri's episode because we just recorded it this week and it comes out early June and it is so amazing. We say that about every guest episode because they are amazing. And I'm just like loving these opportunities to connect with people. Where else in your day-to-day life do you carve out 1 to 2 hours to go deep and hear someone's story, but also have this exchange of energy and conversation and ideas and just like sharing thoughts in such a beautiful way? Because we're not, like when we have guests on, we're not like doing this hard-hitting interview of like just throwing questions at a person. It is really conversational and it's really generative. And so yeah, it's like when it's fresh on my mind, but even past it, it's always so relevant to themes that are existing, right? It's like there's always things we talk about with someone, and like in that exact week, we're like, oh yeah, and this totally connects to what's happening here. And so I don't even know where I was going with that, but I did reference her episode at the top of this conversation because she did the hypnotherapy for us. Well, is there anything you want to talk about before I bring this back up? Okay, so Kaveri is our next guest episode. That is, if I'm not mistaken, I think that comes out June 6th. And I'm sorry, June 4th. Yes, I'm pretty certain. Don't quote me. But we did a hypnotherapy session after our conversation, and I love hypnotherapy. I think it is such a powerful tool. Find that, and I mentioned this too, that when people are doing any type of, whether you're working with a coach, whether you're in therapy, whatever you do, I do believe in the power of combining somatic, mind body, with whatever you're talking and processing. I think it's really critical to approach these things, these deeper layers of yourself with multiple facets because that's how we really get to it, right? It's like you can't only think your way through, you can only talk your way through so much. And the hypnotherapy I find just so potent in that way. But we did that hypnotherapy really, well, it was about connecting with your core essence. But what I loved so much was that you and I have been talking about building out, expanding our community through doing gatherings, starting to reach into that or expand into that, right? Past just the conversations we have, which we're doing all of that, but like really intentionally taking the next step, whether it's like going on video and then starting to launch, opportunities to gather and come around the center. And so we have been talking about this idea of I am, this concept of I am. Who are you underneath all of the conditioning? Who are you in your core essence? I know that it came up in conversation about so much of that I am is reconnecting to who you were before conditioning, your inner child, your soul's essence, all of that. But I loved being able to jump from that recording because she's on the West Coast. So we did it at night for you and then going to dinner with Keith, with my husband, and just being hyper aware because I came out of a short hypnotherapy session. My brain was a little bit more open and receptive to observing how I was communicating. And I really liked how I was communicating. It was just like, it felt like me, a little bit more me, like if that even sounds normal, what's normal? But
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? Like I was like, okay, I'm
Was
not
that a
doing
feeling, or can
anything.
you put an example to
Mm,
that?
I'll give you both. I was, we're at dinner and we're talking, and I was kind of just really zoned in. Like I was like in that flow of conversation that I love to get into, but it felt really direct and I felt really clear. I felt like I was really so feeling wise. I felt really grounded. And maybe I'll bring it back with some astrology here. Is I felt really grounded. I felt really clear and concise, which is something that I don't know that I would say I'm working on it because I'm more or less just really working on just really loving the way that my brain and the way I communicate is going to always have tangents. We're going to circle around, we're going to ride the roller coaster, we're going to do all the things, and we may or may not come back, but I don't care. Like, and at the same time, I married an Aries with a Capricorn stellium, an Aries stellium. So what does he love more than for you to just get to the point? And so I was having this really nice I wouldn't say balance, but this nice feeling and experience of being able to do both, to still feel true to who I am and use as many words as I feel like to get my point across while still being really, really heard because I could tell in the way that he was receiving and how we were having the conversation. And so it just felt really, really good. And so, yeah, the example is really that it's in the conversation, almost having this like present and out of body experience where I was very rooted and grounded in the conversation. It was very direct. It was really good. And it was also like I could see myself in it being like, yeah, that's how you communicate, girl. Like this is you in your expression where you feel so you and you feel so rooted and you're not changing who you are, but you're also speaking directly to how this person in front of you receives information too. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I think it's just organic for me in my area of my professional life of development too, is
Mm,
like I think about the sentiments, right? I train communication skills, how we communicate, how we best communicate with other
hmm.
people. We look at all of those types of things, and whatever I'm training, and I think this circles back to the sentiments here, is like it's not about changing yourself.
Yeah.
It's not about, maybe back to narratives, naming like this way of communicating is better than this way or XYZ. And yet, when we're in partnership relationships, it behooves us all to just take note of our communication style. And it sounds like it's so huge. That's like the ideal spot. You, as someone who's a coach and a trainer, would want people to get where they feel good about the way they're communicating. It's authentic, it's true to themselves, but who they're sat across from or who they're communicating with, they're really feeling like they're communicating in a way that they're easily heard and understood, and all of those things. So, wow, all of that from our 15-minute hypnotherapy sesh.
I know. I feel like we've gone through so many different like winding roads of these topics today because
It's our
that's what
currents.
we do. Yeah.
So, on that theme of currents, we're going to let these currents live where they're at, let you follow along and really reflect on what came up for you during this session. So, thank you for joining in our conversations, and until next time. Thanks for tuning in. If you resonate with today's conversation, connect with us on Instagram at Karmic Mirror Podcast and send us a message.
And don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen. And if you're loving Karmic Mirror, we'd appreciate a glowing review or a share with someone who could benefit.
As we close, remember, life is not a one-size-fits-all approach. How are you honoring your unique path? Stay curious and always be kind to yourself. Until next time on Karmic Mirror.